The first thing that I want you to do is to write your name and hour on the back side of your paper. So here I've written my first and last name and my hour. Make sure you think about which direction your drawing needs to go. So for this one, I'm going to work vertically, so my paper is up and down. Next, I need to look at my sketch and figure out where my vanishing point should be. In my pandemic sketch, you can see I put my vanishing point in the top left. So all of the dimension is moving back towards that vanishing point, drawing my eye to the 2020. For the example that I'm doing today, I am going to keep the vanishing point in the center of my paper. This will have all of the dimension coming toward the middle. So the first thing I need to do is figure out the middle measurement of the short side of my paper. So if I measure, I can see this is a 9-inch wide piece of paper. So my middle point would be at the 4.5-inch mark. Next, I'm going to measure the height of my paper, which is 12 inches. So I am going to flip my ruler at the 4.5-inch mark and measure up 6 inches to find the middle of my page. I am going to place my vanishing point in the center of my paper. Next, you're going to want to take a look back at your sketch. So here is my sketch of my turtle going through boxes that I looked at. We need to create the front side of our shapes. For my pandemic, that meant I was using rectangles and house shapes. For this one, I'm going to use squares and rectangles and keep it a little bit more simple. If you are struggling with perspective, I would suggest that you follow this example today. Be sure to look at your sketch to figure out where you need to place your shapes within the space of your paper. If you need to draw in a rough sketch of something to help with placement, you can do that. So for mine, I drew a sketch of the turtle shell to help me see where the turtle's body would be. And then now I'm going to draw in the squares throughout my paper that his neck will weave through. I'm using 2 inches as my measurement to create my shapes. I don't want my shapes to be too small, or it will be hard to add the openings and have my object weave through the different forms that I create. It is good to keep your shapes towards the outside edges or further away from your vanishing point to make sure that you leave room for any dimension that you add when you turn these shapes into forms. Remember, for this assignment, you need to have a minimum of 5 forms, dimensional forms, that are drawn in linear perspective. So that means with converging lines that connect to your vanishing point, parallel ending dimension lines like we've practiced. So make sure as you are placing your shapes on your paper that you're considering how to fit at least 5 forms in the space that we have. Once you have drawn your 5 shapes, then you are going to connect those to your vanishing point with converging lines. Remember, I call this the corner check process, and this is similar to the practices that we did in class. So I go to each of my corners and I ask myself, can I draw to my vanishing point without drawing through my shape? If I can, I go ahead and add the line. Now remember, if you draw your lines and you run into another form like I did with the house, then you would stop that line there. So if I run into another shape, I would stop my line as soon as I hit that shape. So then I continue to go around and check my corners. Remember, if your shape is in line with your vanishing point, like here, my shape is right above the vanishing point, I would only see one additional side of the form. When my shape is off to the side and above the vanishing point, I would see at least 3 sides of my form. Remember, if it is even with where your horizon line would be, or even with your vanishing point horizontally, again, you'd only see 2 sides. So make sure to go through to each of your forms, check each of the corners, and connect your dimension back to the vanishing point. Some students have chosen to work with curved forms, so here would be how you would connect it. So here with my circle, I would place my ruler so it's lined up with my vanishing point, and then I rotate it till I find the topmost edge. Then I do the same thing where I line it up with the bottom edge of my circle, and then I can repeat the shape of my circle within those converging lines. So it's a smaller version of the shape that I just drew. Then I'm going to keep my converging lines between those 2 edges, use the back side of the smallest circle, and then erase the rest of the circle where it overlaps with my form. Essentially, I'm creating a parallel curve on the back edge of the form. Now, if you had something curved like a cloud here, again, I would do the corner check and not only check the corners, but check where the edges would be on my cloud. And then I would try and repeat this shape of my curve just a little bit further back in the converging lines, and then erase any extra converging lines. So this is how you could add dimension to something that is curved. Now that I have my dimension lines drawn, it's time for me to end my objects. Remember, they are not going to infinity and beyond. We need to have a stopping point. So I'm using parallel lines to stop my forms. So I line up my ruler with the edge of my object, and then I slide it back however far I want the object to go. And then I do the same thing for the next side. So I line it up with the top of my form here, slide it back to meet with the line that I just drew, and then I erase any converging lines that I no longer need. I will want to do this process for all 5 of my forms. Again, please make sure that these lines are parallel. Remember, that means that they will never intersect the front line of the shape. So make sure that they are going the same direction and evenly spaced. And now you have your 5 forms drawn in linear perspective, ready to start adding details.